We know that all the discoveries of malaria right from the beginning have happened in India, with Sir Ronald Ross discovering the cycle and how malaria is spread. We have had certain huge mortality with malaria in India in the past, and that still remains a big problem, and there are endemic areas of malaria in the country. Now, once we had this excellent response from the ICMR institutes during this COVID crisis, and all the institutes have stood up, including this NIMR, for the COVID testing for the nation, and have taken the glory of ICMR to newer heights. The issue is that once COVID goes, which will probably hopefully happen by next year, and we have a vaccine, we have the mask, and we have social distancing and COVID appropriate behavior to continue, and then we should be looking at the target of malaria eradication, malaria elimination, which is the targeted for 2030, and tuberculosis. So these are going to be the two major mandates of the Indian Council of Medical Research: malaria and tuberculosis after the COVID, and also during the COVID times as well. So from that perspective, I am of the opinion that this institute could play a very major role for malaria control and malaria research, not only in the Indian subcontinent, but also in the Southeast Asia region as a whole. Because, and I feel with the new dynamic director that you people have, this institute will blossom into being one of the major centers for not only research, but training, and also for the public health perspective for malaria for the Southeast Asia region. It is a challenge, but it is doable. We have seen the two new initiatives from the Mera India Consortium and the Indian Malaria Mission, which have recently been launched. And these two projects will take the status of this institute of being of much more responsibility, and also guiding the malaria research in the country, and also connect first all the ICMR institutes that are working on malaria, whether it be tribal, whether it be the vector control, whether it be the parasitology or the epidemiology. All those researches will have to be connected and woven together, and the main role will be played by this institute. So I will not stand between the director telling us about this institute, and I wish this institute all the glory and all the best of future in the coming years. We have a lot of construction going on at the back, which should be completed by March of next year. We expect that there will be large auditoriums, guest houses, as well as student accommodation for PhD students. So basically, PhD students are going to be the backbone of research in any organization. And once that happens, I think that this would be a great shot in the arm for this institute. So I wish all the best, and I request the director to tell us about the progress and the new initiatives on malaria research.
So thank you very much, sir, for the encouragement that you have shown. I should, at the outset, also thank ICMR headquarters. Everybody at the ICMR headquarters has been very forthcoming with help to us. The ECT division, especially Dr. Ganga Khedkar, and then Dr. Samir Panda, and our nodal officer, Dr. Manju Rahi, and others in the ECT have been always forthcoming with help and solving our problems. And Dr. Iyengar and Dr. Kuteka have been very helpful in resolving administrative as well as scientific issues that we've come up with. So the support from headquarters is really vital for us in going forward. I will spend only a few minutes just giving you details of the contributions NIMR has made so far for the COVID pandemic, which of course struck us out of the blue. But ICMR reacted really fast, and so did NIMR. And sir, as of date, we were, as you know, central and regional depot. and literally millions of PCR reactions, RNA extraction kits and BTMs have been distributed from NIMR headquarters across India. And the heroes of this project, the COVID project, let's call it, have been here. Two of them are here, Dr. Himmat and Dr. Anu, along with a very, very excellent team of people who never refused the oddest of works at oddest of times. And really, it's a tribute to ICMR that they have staff in them who are so dedicated to the country. And it includes Prashant, Kailash, Dr. Ramdas, Dr. Abhinav, Vipali, Vinita, and of course, a whole cadre of POs and other people like Mr. Tomar, Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Rawat, and Mr. Yogesh, who's here, who have contributed 24/7 for the COVID pandemic in any support that was requested from us from the headquarters. Sir, we have been in COVID doing quality assurance. We've been essentially running the NIV testing facility in Noida. And over the past 8 months or so, we have been involved in all of these activities to a very high standard, which includes validation of VTMs, RNA extraction kits, real-time PCR kits, and antibody RDT kits. We are also a biorepository, essentially single-handedly run by Dr. Anu, which has already collected greater than 600 blood samples, sera samples from blood and sera samples from COVID patients, and greater than 2,500 BTMs, which are stored here for future research. In terms of research contributions, sir, we are an integral part of several studies, and this is sort of underplayed, but we are on track for these. And I will shortly brief you about some of them. We are heavily involved in vitamin D study in context of COVID, in serological studies, in validation of antibody tests, but also potentially developing new ones, in viral sequencing of the viruses that have been extracted from VTMs, in biomarker study, and in monoclonal antibody generation for COVID therapy. And in this slide below, you can see photographs of only a few of literally hundreds of people who over the past 8 years have tirelessly and endlessly worked 24/7 towards each of these highlighted themes that I've shown you. It's not possible for me to go through all the people who have contributed to this, but on last count, sir, we had more than 300 NIMR staff who have contributed to COVID flawlessly over the past 8 months or so. And you can see activities during daytime and during evening time and during night time, which essentially were done to fulfill the activities that are shown in the previous slide. And every morning when I come, there are always these ladies who are running the testing lab, and nothing is more inspirational than to see these young people 7 or 8 in the morning running these facilities from samples that arrived the previous night. So we have been very proud and we are very happy to be part of the COVID effort in ICMR. So some of the research that we've been driving in COVID is potentially interesting, and we will see the fruits of this in coming years. But one study that we've launched is the relation of COVID with vitamin D. As you know, yesterday itself, the UK government is considering actually adding vitamin D as a supplement even in breads and milk because of its possible positive effects in COVID in terms of protection. And here are the two heroes who've been actually running this exercise. This is Dr. Hari Shankar and Dr. Mridul, who's also a first author of a paper that we published recently on the detailed mechanism by which we have shown how vitamin D might be a very important component in helping in COVID containment in terms of reducing mortality and perhaps overall risk as well in all populations. And so these studies are now ongoing because we are now developing an HPLC system, hopefully in future a mass spec-based system where we can accurately measure vitamin D levels. Of course, this is not of consequence only for COVID. This is of consequence to any infectious disease, including malaria, where in some cases you do have ARDS and other symptoms which are common between COVID and malaria. So assessing vitamin D levels and other biomolecules in future is going to be very good. And I think these two young boys here are going to set that up for us at NIMR. Now, in context of malaria, the rest of the initiatives and slides are going to be focused on malaria. So as you know, malaria has shown tremendous reduction over the past 20 years, but specifically over the past 7 to 8 years. The reduction is almost exponential. As you can see, there's almost a straight line. And now we're at a point where the number of deaths due to malaria in 2019, as reported by the program, were just 77. In context of the COVID mortality, this is essentially a very, very small number. And this gives us a time then to rethink, or at least reconsider or reassess where we are going in context of malaria and where we want to go in context of malaria. So, of course, these trends will continue as long as some of the main tools that have controlled malaria so far that's LNINs and ACTs, if they continue to work. However, failure of one or the other or both will then again see what we have seen in 60s and 70s, which is the rise in research of malaria. So malaria goes up and down depending on how good the tools are to contain them. And once the tools start failing, then we need to re-strategize. But in context of the trends that we see here, we have to rethink whether we have sufficiently robust surveillance systems for the future because the cases have gone so low, and whether we should reconsider the research foci or continue on the traditional path. One of the things that we've been launching, the process of launching is essentially a malaria dashboard. And this is driven by this idea that malaria data needs to be essentially integrated. We see a huge amount of integration of data in COVID, for example, both in India and abroad. There are websites and dashboards which essentially are real time, which are providing you information which is extremely useful from a public health perspective. So we've come up with a scheme where real-time data from various facets can be then absorbed onto a digital dashboard, and this digital dashboard will then be accessible for entomological and analysis by everybody. This is going to be free, open for malaria researchers and public health people. And so this exercise has already started in collaboration with ISRO. They have a center in NISAC, and we'll be very happy to take this forward in the next 6 months or so. So malaria integration in terms of all the assets and public health and research inputs that can go onto a centralized digital dashboard, which is then publicly accessible to everybody, is one of the initiatives that we've taken. The second initiative we've taken here is proof of concept elimination studies. And one of these studies is going to be done in Mewar. And this is really interesting. Actually, if you bear with me, this map is quite interesting. If you look at the API of Haryana as a state, it's negligible, it's 0.05. But when you start looking at Mewar, it goes up to 0.6. And within this, you can see in Nu, it's 1.5. And within that, the PHC Ujina, in fact, is a major contribution for malaria, which is API of 9.8. And herein, we want to implement 3 new tools to see if they will aid in elimination efforts. And if these tools work out, which is essentially one of them is the TrueNAT. Could you move this bottle? Yeah, which is essentially TrueNAT, which will pick up low-density infections. And then a new thing that we want to try is SMS and mobile clinic-based surveillance. These 3 new tools will be deployed in an elimination study in Mewar to see if these would be useful and then possibly replicated in other centers where there is significant amount of malaria. So this study will be launched shortly. Some very interesting analysis we've done from the data that we've got for malaria in 2019 is the following. You can see that despite the fact that we've had significant gains in malaria control, the states shown here in red, including Chhattisgarh, Mizoram, etc., and these districts, in fact, have very large high amount of APIs in these states. And these are actually mapped to the Indian map here. You can see these are the regions where there is either you can want to call it persistent or residual malaria, but despite intervention methods, these still are foci where there is significant amount of malaria. Now the question is why this is so. This question will not be answered by the program. This question has to be answered by NIMR. And we are launching some analysis presently, complete socio-economic, demographic, program implementation, all aspects of malaria control will be put forward in this very cohesive analysis to come up with possible, first and foremost, situation analysis for these districts, and secondly, to come up with possible solutions. And it's very likely that in each of these districts, different solutions have to be powered up in order to make gains in malaria. So these are persistent districts. There are about 20 odd of them, so the number is actually manageable by NIMR teams. And this is something also a new initiative that we've taken, and it's driven largely by Sanjeev, who's been really good at mapping it. And photographs of people who've shown here are the main drivers of these ideas. So when I joined, I actually visited some of the field units. Others I could not join because of COVID. But I was really impressed when I went to Kheda, which was, as you know, the first field station of NIMR. And I asked them to digitize. They've actually kept very immaculate records in old notebooks of all the patients that ever visited NIMR at the time MRC. And I asked them to digitize it. And that was actually done by Dr. Baharia, who's the OIC there, and Dr. C.P. Yadav, who's a statistician here in headquarters. And you can see this beautiful summary slide that they've come up. This captures epic data over 4 decades from Kheda. And what's nice about it is that you can see the trends, the amount of surveillance that was happening in yellow, the PV, PF cases where there were spikes. Of course, this is just Kheda district, but we've done analysis and superimposed the data from wider regions in Gujarat, and they are very similar patterns. And you can see again the point that's made very beautifully here. There's a significant drop in cases from 2007 onwards. And these were the intervention tools that allowed that to happen. The national drug policy changed, LLI and bed nets were introduced, the IRS and sprays were changed to imperatroids, and biological control as well as ACTs were introduced successfully. And so you can see the low number of cases which are mostly now Vivax in 2019. We are now continuing to do this sort of a situation analysis over 4 decades across all 10 field stations and then publish them, because these become the models by which you can assess the success of local programs. So as you know, ICMR, when I joined, soon after that, we had defended a very large study, dry blood spot sampling study, DBS study, under the NFHS 5 program. And the whole idea was to do an epic study across India of prevalence of all and what's shown on the left is very interesting. So if you see here, this is actually somewhat possibly similar to what might be happening with COVID, but you can see the degree of parasitemia that you have correlates with the symptoms and severity of the disease. And what's worrying are these subpatent or very low density infections which go unnoticed and are asymptomatic but are potential transmitters. So this study is actually aiming to capture some of these, because we do aim to deploy the latest tools in PCR-based technologies to capture low-density infections. And fortunately, we have already done a very nice situation analysis, which was published last month. You can see here a map of India where all the non-P falciparum and non-P Vivax malaria infections have been mapped. And so these contain OVL, malaria, and Nolza. And you can see they are all across the regions where otherwise malaria is rampant in any case. So we've done a very nice situation analysis on the basis of which now the DBS study, which is ongoing, will be launched, and we will be processing close to 80,000 samples from all across India and having a map just like this one, but which will represent all the 5 parasites and with the latest tools. So these were not picked by the most sensitive PCR tools, but this DBS study will. And so we hope to have a new map ready by next year for this. Severe Vivax, as you know, is a problem, is a growing problem in the sense it was initially unrecognized and then now it's being recognized, but still not sufficient amounts of work have been done. This is a slide from Dr. Vineeta Singh's group, who's recently contributed a paper, which is a very nice sort of meta-analysis paper. And what's alarming here is these 2 stars. You can see the pool prevalence of severe malaria. This is in people who are in the hospital setting. Is quite significant, 29% or so, and in the same setting, the mortality ranges from 0 to 13% across the country. So severe Vivax was ignored. It's no more a disease that can be ignored. And as you know, sir, India is unfortunately the Vivax capital of the world. And so India really needs to solve this Vivax issue. And it differs quite significantly from P. falciparum, so it's very likely that the same tools will not work for it. Another good example, speaking on the theme of P. Vivax, is the huge amount of work that India has already done in developing a P. Vivax vaccine. And we've been working on this on the sidelines for a long time with significant skepticism about whether this is going to work. And so when I joined NIMR, what we were able to do is to actually combine the genetic and epic data that existed in NIMR already under Dr. Abhinav Sinha. And we combined the data from my lab, structural data, and we were able to come up with a very nice synthesis of why the vaccine coverage for Vivax is not going to be optimum given any one particular strain, because of the significant amount of diversity that you have. Any strains that you pick up have significant amounts of polymorphism up till about 55%. And therefore, there's no one strain that can be used to make a Vivax vaccine. This paper was also published in the last few weeks. Now, malaria, again, in India, there are several flavors of malaria. And as you know very well, sir, Northeast remains a critical corridor for malaria, but it presents 2 different kinds of corridors. One issue that we have to be very cautious about is importing malaria. These are the 7 sister states shown here, and these are the APIs in Tripura and Meghalaya, where you can see there's significant amounts of, and significant amounts of malaria. But our worry is this side, which is Myanmar, if drug-resistant parasites can arrive from there, they probably may have arrived already, we don't know as yet. But in the past, drug-resistant parasites usually came from our east. So one is we have to worry about and cover ourselves for importing drug-resistant parasites. The second issue that we have to cover for is exporting parasites to our neighbors. I think this is an international issue, sir. You brought up this issue about Southeast East Asia as a region where we should have more integration. And you can see here, sir, Bhutan is surrounded by 4 Indian states and 10 odd districts which have significant amounts of residual malaria. Now, both importing of malaria and exporting of malaria are international problems. But I think, again, NIMR needs to cover these two issues with small studies to assess and then eliminate the program, what may be the best containment procedures for this. So this is another initiative that we've taken. And again, the 2 heroes of this project are shown here, Dr. Sanjeev and Dr. Kuldeep, who's our OIC head in Guwahati. Dr. Alex Secret from Chennai, who's the OIC head there, has made this wonderful map, very recent map of the primary vectors from malaria. Of course, this is not new, but what's nice about this map is that we are going to use this sort of a mapping analysis then to launch into what's called genomic epidemiology. So here we will be using the latest tools in DNA sequencing. First and foremost, to sequence the Indian vectors, which have not been done so far, fully sequence and to annotate them. Secondly, we will be using amplicon technology to come up with tools so that we can differentiate between primary and secondary vectors or related species and subspecies. Because vector biology has been on the decline, but on the other hand, with the rise of molecular biology, I think vector biology will get a new impetus. And so here, that's the purpose of this slide, was actually to take something as visual as a vector landscape and to add to the fact that when you add molecular biology tools to this figure, it will become extremely illuminating for vector biology in the long run, in context of malaria, but also possibly in context of other vector-borne diseases, including dengue, which is on the rise as well. And so the tools we develop here will be able to be deployed in other vector-borne disease systems. So one of the new tools that we have developed in NIMR, in fact, I should say Mr. Gaurav has developed here, and this paper is in review, is ATSB. It's a very simple technology. It's an attractive toxic sugar bait. And all we did was to add to the sugar solution 3% boric acid. And you can see this is the state of the experiment. It's done with mosquitoes inside, and this sugar bait is kept there. Of course, mosquitoes are attracted to it for a meal. But you can see, sir, the mortality rates of this boric acid mixed sugar are so high. This is against Glucifaces, Stephensi, and even dengue vector Aedes aegypti. So it's close to 100% wiping out of these mosquitoes in a relatively short time using this simple technology. And so we are now in consultation with ECD, Dr. Manjur Rahi and Dr. Ashwani Kumar at BCRC, Dr. Jambolingam and others we've made a committee to take this kind of a simple tool forward. It's cheap to make, it can be homemade essentially. It's easy to deploy inside and outside. And if it's able to knock down vectors to a certain extent or to a great degree, it would be very useful in containing and sparing malaria. Another initiative that we've started, which again is going to be of interest to both COVID and malaria, is very simple idea of ABO blood typing. It's a very low-hanging fruit, but when we had this COVID scientist join here, Dr. Meenu, we, along with Anoop, who's here, and Dipali in their lab, we started typing basically for ABO blood type of all patients who come to malaria. But Meenu has also managed to persuade all our particular field units and also other collaborators who are on board with us to simply deploy RDT at the same time as well as the ABO type blood typing at the same time. It's a very simple technique. And once we have epic data from all across India about this, this would be a very nice correlative study because, as you know, sir, the blood group type to a certain extent is considered to determine the severity of malaria. O versus A versus AB versus A or B. And so therefore, knowing the blood types and then correlating them with severity is going to be important. These kind of studies have not been robustly done in India to date. And no study has been done pan-India in this context. And so this is already started, sir, and we have some new data already, but we are waiting for more data from the field units. Another new initiative, sir, we've taken is, as you know, there are many labs all across India who've been targeting the malaria parasite for drug discovery. However, to my knowledge, there are none that are actually targeting the vector for drug discovery. Now, that's a completely different concept of looking at new druggable targets within the vectors. This could, of course, be any vectors, not necessarily just malaria vectors. And we were lucky, we sort of recruited Ramalinga Swami fellow Dr. Soumya, who's shown here. And we've already initiated efforts to sort of line out all the protein families in malaria vectors which are susceptible to drugs that have been developed in other in other systems, for example, in yeast or in bacteria like mupirocin. Mupirocin analogs will be one of them. To then target the malaria vectors. And this work is actually ongoing. This has got to be one of the fastest papers that this chap will write soon. He only joined about 2 months ago, but one of his manuscripts is already in preparation in terms of the idea of targeting the vectors. In terms of the policy issues, sir, we have been interested for considerable time after discussions with Anup, who's been an integral part of these discussions throughout from the very start, about the future of tefanoquine and mefloquine. And Dr. Sundar, who's an MD who also joined us on COVID duty here in NIMR, has been looking at, and what we've been doing is in fact looking at a very detailed reviews on both these drugs and their future in context of India. Tefanoquine, as you know, is now the possible game-changer drug because it's a single-dose drug which will kill the whole idea of P-Virex relapse. The 14-day drug regime for Primaquine essentially suffers from non-compliance at least, and it has more problems as well. Mefloquine, sir, it is used now and then. For short-term use, it's recommended, but for long-term use, it has very detrimental effects. It's been withdrawn from many countries, especially from armed forces who go into areas where they have to be protected from malaria and then take it as prophylactics. And I think in terms of policy, we are hoping to come up with very robust publications on this in the next 2 months, which can then hopefully be considered forward by the ICMR and by the program for policy issues in whether and how to use these possibly in the Indian situations. So in the past 1 year, we've made several new collaborations and MOUs. You have encouraged us to link with medical colleges. Thankfully, Anup knows just about all the medical colleges across India. And so mostly because of Anup's efforts, we actually have now MOUs and understandings with several medical colleges across India, which are shown here. We've also set up new MOUs in 2020 with several universities like Goa and Emory University. But in addition to that, we've actually set up where we are collecting samples for COVID for the moment. But in going forward, we hope to utilize these links for malaria sampling as well. So here is a very interesting issue. We are clearly a very good sample repository. ICMR in general and NIMR in the long run has always been a very good repository for samples. And why my vision is, and one of the initiatives that I'm really trying to push is that besides being a repository, it has to have capability for sample and data analysis. Otherwise, ICMR systems and NIMR will always be open for exploitation because we have a hoard of gold sitting around with us, but do not actually take it to completion, are not able to do sample and data analysis. And these are the facilities that we are now trying to augment, be it COVID or be it malaria, develop infrastructure here within the NIMR institutes and within its field station, so that whether we are looking at vectors or malaria parasites or host factors, we do all this work on our own. So this is something that needs to be fostered, both in context of malaria and COVID, but specifically for malaria strategically. And one of the ideas that I've had about this for consideration, sir, would be really if in future we can actually give more stress to recruiting people who have both MDs and PhDs, because these people know their medical, medical research reasonably well because of the fact that they are trained in medicine but have had a taste of real bench work, cutting edge research. These people can take on problems which are at the interface of both, in medical sciences that need to be dealt under the ICMR banner. I think these are not out and out lab researchers like DBT labs focus on. So this is the kind of recruitment, if we can push this forward, sir, not only for these infectious diseases, but for all ICMR thematic issues, I think it will really help, because then we can leverage the full, leverage the full capacity of being a sample repository across India, but also sample and data analysis, which is actually the field of molecular medicine. So, sir, finally, I'll be very brief now with just 2 or 3 more slides about our overall vision. NIMR, as you know, sir, has 10 field units spread across India. We are moving forward by not expanding our field units. Perhaps there will be some containment of the field unit numbers, but on the other hand, we are making non-permanent satellite units, which are based on an MOU basis, so that we don't actually develop new infrastructure there, but we go and work with the people in hospitals who are welcoming us. And we've got a huge list of people who are already interested across India to work with us in satellite units, some of whom I showed you earlier. And It's often said, sir, that malaria is a local and a focal disease, and there's no doubt that's absolutely true and correct. And this is the reason why 10 field stations was set across India. However, from my perspective, sir, for NIMR to take its gainful place in India, we have to think about malaria also in atomic terms. We have to think about it in cellular terms, in digital terms, in molecular terms. In other words, we have to augment and foster these kind of infrastructures in these field units so that they are able to address the burning questions in malaria using these tools. This is already covered, sir, but these are not essentially covered. And one of the ideas that we have going forward in the next 2 to 3 years is to really ramp up the facilities in these field units so that they're able to address the tools of address the issues in malaria biology using the latest tools in molecular biology. In the absence of that, we will remain a sample collection center, but not much more. So this is something that needs to be fostered by all of us, and I know that you and ICMR will always support this. In terms of what kind of thematic research NIMR will take forward under the banner of ICMR, sir, as you know, we have regrouped all the scientists in all the field units in NIMR as well as headquarters into 3 main thematic groups. Those who work on parasites, those who work on vector, and those who do epidemiology. And of course, the central aim of everyone who works on malaria in the end is elimination, but there are different pathways to that. And under your guidance, we have now set up 2 vehicles by which anybody can fulfill their dream of malaria research. One would be under MERA, which will be channeling elimination research. The other, sir, is, as you had, this is originally your idea, integrate basic research under a new banner throughout the ICMR system, again, under these thematic streams. So in terms of MERA India has done exceedingly well, sir, over the past 1 year. You'll be proud to know that we have funded studies across all of these centers in the past 6 to 8 months. This is notwithstanding the problems we've had with staff in terms of devotion to COVID and so on. We've been working endlessly to first line out teams, get the best proposals from all across India, and now many of these studies are funded. And states here are shown, and all the centers that are funded, and a significant number of these, close to 50% of them, are non-ICMR institutes. So that shows the outreach of ICMR now in terms of becoming the umbrella for cutting-edge malaria research in context of elimination. So with the same sort of theme for elimination, we have discussed, and now we are happy to announce to everybody here, ICMR's malaria mission. This is the IMM, and this is essentially to integrate strengths for research. And the idea remains very simple. Across, so sir, we've done some homework since last time we had a meeting. There are some odd 52 scientists all across the ICMR system who work on malaria. And they are spread across these and other ICMR institutes. So the idea is very simple. We integrate the strengths from everybody who's part of the ICMR family. We've broken them down into parasites, vectors, and epidemiological divisions because of their research interests. There are directors from each of these centers who've very gracefully and nicely agreed to be thematic leaders, but they'll be the leaders guiding research. And the whole idea, sir, here is to have multi-PI, multi-centric, and multidisciplinary work so that the work is cohesive, it's not scattered, it's meaningful, and it's long-term. So these are not going to be for short-term 1 to 2 year projects. These are for launching 3 to 5 year visions by multiple people across India who have expertise in various aspects. For example, if you were to talk about severe vivax, we want to look at markers, we want clinical data, we want people with expertise in mass spec, we want people with expertise in metabolomics, and that's not possible necessarily to have in one center below. So this IMM gives you another vehicle to actually integrate malaria across India in terms of cutting edge research. And lastly, sir, I'm very happy to announce that we have a very nice MOU with CSIR. Now we get PhD students we will get PhD students every year, as many as we need. We've taken some 30 odd students from a selection of close to 230 students who applied for it, and all of them had CSIR fellowships. So these are the creme de la creme of PhD students from across India who've joined NIMR this year, and I have started the session already, and they are really the future of NIMR and its research, and I'm really happy and proud to present them here. Lastly, sir, in terms of infrastructure, this is the last slide. You are, sir, sitting here. This is the main road, and you've visited along this path, and you've seen the new construction that's happening, the big auditorium, the small one, the guest house, and the students' hostel. But sir, there is a large amount of vacant space here, which I think should be utilized for research, for cutting-edge research, and we are floating some plans to cover as much as 50,000 square feet over 4 to 5 floors of space, which will be dedicated for research within the NIMR system, but also within the ICMR system. These research space will be open for ICMR to set up cutting-edge labs, for example, BSL-3s or even 4, to address any future pandemics, to do disease modeling. So this is just going to be a resource both for NIMR and for ICMR. And the plans are getting ready for this big building here, and we look forward to your guidance in that as well. And this is the last slide, sir, just to show you that we've set up very nice sitting spaces in various corners of the institute to promote and foster discussions. Thematic issues can be discussed and debated by students and scientists. And notwithstanding COVID, there are people who do while socially distanced. And this is also a nice feature where nice living spaces are being created to discuss science. I think I'll stop there, sir. Thank you very much for your attention.
Professor Bhargav, DG ICMR and Secretary DHR, Dr. Amit Sharma, faculty members of NIMR, staff, friends. I congratulate Dr. Sharma, faculty members and staff of NIMR on the Foundation Day. This is what we celebrate generally when I say that when we on the Foundation Day, 3 things are there. One is we celebrate because that day we were born. Secondly, we see what has been done. We review our style activities. Thirdly, this is most important, many should ignore about the future plan, what we are going to do. You have seen that Dr. Amit Sharma has rightly given the details, what the activities has been done in 1 year and what he is supposed to plan or work in the next year. Particularly, I am associated with this institute for many years, starting for when I was a director in early 90s, director of National Bacterial Disease Control Program, director of NCDC, Special Director General, Public Health in charge of our programs, and also the associated with the SAC. I've seen this institute coming up, and particularly I appreciate one thing, reorganization of this institute functioning, particularly not as a division wise, but 3 thematic groups which he mentioned just now, particularly epidemiology, environmental health, bacterial biology, and parasite host biology. The people were divided into 3 groups. So they are in a mind to work. And rightly, not only he has given the details what has been done, though it's a very difficult time. I was in touch with some of the officers on telephone. I have seen that during difficult time also this institute was functioning. And they have assisted ICMR in COVID time also. Just now we have seen the infrastructure development. It was very difficult, sir. I am a chairman of building committee of this institute. We had many meetings with the agencies, and it was not coming up. I do not know how Dr. Amit Sharma has initiated that work. I have seen this construction, it is almost ready, and all what were planned, particularly auditorium or hostel and guest house, it is coming up now there. And even the technical aspect also, I was told that 60 publications have been published and 5 patents during this difficult time. And the new initiative which Dr. Amit Sharma has said, particularly Mewat region, because I know Mewat region, I was a director at that time, 1996. and there was a big outbreak. Nearly 200 deaths were there. And Dr. B.P. Sharma Saab or myself, we used to visit almost daily that area. I think that area requires attention. And particularly PY-VAX, he mentioned, which needs attentions. And other areas, particularly the branches, though a lot of work has been done on branches also. But I think they needs further strengthening, particularly satellite unit. It has been discussed many times in SAC also. I think that requires further. With these few words, I once again congratulate the director, particularly Dr. Amit Sharma. I was told that he has completed 1 year as a director on this institute. So he requires a special congratulations for that. And this much progress has been made. And I look forward that this institute progress further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we would like to felicitate today our employees who have completed 25 years of ICMR service this year. Can you please show the slide? So, two of our employees, Dr. P.K. Atul, scientist, F, and Narendra Singh, they have completed 25 years of service this year. We will be felicitating them today. In addition, we will be felicitating our COVID warriors.
So we got these certificates made. There are more than 300 COVID warriors, so we will distribute them. They have your signature and my signature.
So we will be felicitating all the COVID warriors who were involved in different activities. As a token of appreciation, we would like to present the plants to our guests. I request Dr. Amit Sharma, Director, to.
That's fine, sir.
Dr. Himmat Singh is presenting memento to DG, sir. Dr. Himmat, could you please present memento to Dr. Shivlal, sir?
Thank you.
On behalf of Mera India, we would like to present a special gift to Professor Balram Bhargav, sir.
So we'll get it put in the car. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We have concluded our program.
So, it is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for today's function on behalf of the NIMRians. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Professor Balram Bhargav, Director General ICMR and Secretary Department of Health Research. Sir, you graced this occasion despite the extremely busy schedule in this COVID time. We will definitely target our research towards malaria elimination, sir. Your inspiration and guidance will infuse energy in the NIMR staff. Dr. Shivlal has been guiding force since many years to our institute. He is our chairman of the scientific committee. Thank you, sir, for your constant guidance and making to today's function. We are thankful to Dr. Toteja, Additional DG ICMR, Dr. Iyengar, Senior DDG Administration ICMR, Dr. Rajiv Roy, Senior FA ICMR, for their constant support and participating virtually in this event. Many dignitaries have participated in this event virtually. I would like to specially thank the directors of ICMR Institute, our former directors, Professor Das, Dr. Valecha, chairs and members of various committees like Ethics Committee, Animal Ethics Committee, Technical Committee, and various other committees. I would also like to thank all my colleagues from NIMR and also from other institutes for participating in this function. I would like to congratulate all our colleagues, Dr. Atul and Mr. Narendra, who have completed 25 years of service. Congratulations to both of you. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our sincere thanks to all our colleagues who were involved in organizing this event, especially Dr. Himmat, Dr. Vandana, Mr. Yogesh, Mrs. Sunita, Mr. Gaurav, Veena, Anup, Mr. Rawat, Ratan, Gulshan, Nikunjay, and many more for their hard work. Finally, I thank our dynamic leadership director, Dr. Amit Sharma, for his constant guidance in taking this institute forward. I also congratulate him on completing 1 year yesterday. So we had joined exactly 1 year back. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll excuse myself. But I think excellent job. I think it's absolutely going in the right direction. This energy has been infused, and this can go a long way. And any support from the headquarters is there. Whatever you want, it will be done. It will be done because we need to take it forward to the logical end. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, thank you so much. आप guide करते रहिए sir. Thank you.
आप आ रहे थे इसलिए मैं खुद ही आया.
Sir, Mera India has launched a newsletter, monthly newsletter. It's very nice. It's going to be all across India. Just want to show you this. So in this newsletter, we have updates about research. So we actually digitized old books. Yes, the books are nothing. So we digitized them publicly available free as PDF. Then we've digitized Indian Journal of Malaria from 1947. So you can go to the website and get data from 80 years ago. All of them are available to everybody across India. So then it gives an update on malaria research across India in that month. Then it talks about Mera India, all the thematic issues, so all information is publicly available. Then we have updated because of COVID, we have updated the COVID activities. Public engagement. Then any award that somebody has got, like Dr. Ravina Sinha has got and Dr. Rishabh Award. Then the latest publications which are of interest to and then every month we interview one NIMR scientist or any scientist who works on malaria. In-depth interview or what motivates them, what kind of future what they're going to do. And this will be from here on, sir, one ICMR scientist and one non-ICMR scientist, because Mera funds close to 50% outside of ICMR. And this will be on the website. This is on the website. It comes as an email. Mera newsletter. This is Dr. Satish Sharma who's running Mera India. He's the coordinator. This is Mr. Yogesh who's our administrative officer.
Working from India Alliance.
Okay. Sir, welcome to say attend here. Thank you so much.